classic Paradise one.
We are back with the Paradise Valley podcast. Week 11 coming up. That intro music felt fitting, given the intensity, given some of the matchups this week. It's do or die. It's do or die time. Am I right, Pat, or what?
I mean, there's nothing like fantasy football come around Thanksgiving time. You know that's crunch time. Couldn't really hear the music from my end, but we're getting ready for it.
All right. It was till I collapsed Eminem. Our producers had some music struggles, so I had to step in there. But Dappy, how you doing?
Well, we're 2-8. Not doing that good, but we're here.
Yeah, that's more than some people can say. So you got that. Let's see. Let's get into it right off the bat. We're gonna do a little bit looking at kind of teams overall, how they're doing on the season, playoff contenders, some clown suit contenders or last place punishment contenders. Talk trades. What are some of the highlights? What are some of the lowlights trades wise? Look at league winners, some guys who could kind of potentially burst onto the scene over the next couple of weeks and make a huge difference come leading into and during the playoffs. And then I think there's a couple other things, but we'll save the couple things that for a surprise for the end. How's that?
Sounds like a plan. Let's do it.
Well, I mean, I guess we could start right at the top. Trippers 8-2. What are your initial thoughts on the Trippers, Ross?
I think they've progressively gotten better. It always felt like a team, like he was squeaking out some of these low scoring wins. And then, I think Swift's really come into his own. Mostert was a good deal. He continues to just score points. And Hawkinson's like that difference maker at tight end. And obviously, Dak's been absolutely balling out like top quarterback over the last 4 weeks. So, I mean, in and out, Kirch is going to put together a playoff team as much as some of us are like, he gets lucky or his team's not that good. At the end of the day, he wins fantasy matchups, and that's all you can ask for. I will say, like, the one downside, and, depth is important this time of year with injuries. There's really not much there after his starting lineup. It's really boom or bust with those 8 or 9 guys he has, and if someone gets hurt or anything happens there, he's going to struggle to find some starting players.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I felt like at the beginning of the year, like, I don't know if this is going to be a playoff team, and he just, there's been weeks he's gone off, but then there's also been weeks where he's, just squeaked by 1 by 5 in a close matchup, and one of those being against me with Jordan Addison on that late touchdown at the end of the half. So obviously there's some luck. It feels like Kirch is a lucky guy. We all know that. But like you said, at the end of the day, you put your team in a position to win, get some talent on there. And, even if he's not 8-2, he's probably over 500, even if he's not quite as lucky. So
yeah, it's a good squad.
Yeah, it's come along. So, I mean, it's going to take a pretty big miracle for him not to end up in the playoffs. ESPN's got him at 97% chance. I think that's pretty fair. What about Lane? I think that for me, that kind of seems like he's in the same boat where is this team really leading the way? Is this one of the best teams in the league? And he's just found wins. Some like Thielen's been a bright spot. Keenan Allen last week was huge. James Conner's been a lot better than I expected. Sam Howell leading the league in passing yards. Like, even with Fields going down and Goddard out, some of his guys being a little bit more disappointing than you would hope, he's found a way. So I got to give Lane some credit. But again, this doesn't feel like a super top heavy league like some years. It feels pretty wide open, which is cool.
For sure. Like, if I put down some tiers on my notes beforehand, and it's like you got to put tier 1 as Kirch and Lane, just kind of based off of record, still solid squads. But I'm telling you, as the person in tier 2 trying to fight in for one of those last 2 playoff spots, I'd be happy to see the ACL tears. Like that's not a team that you are like intimidated by. Like you look at someone like the Sundays, the Knights, the Cobras. I mean, we'll throw in D Brown like that lineup this week. He's rolling out like that's a scary lineup. But when you look at the tiers, I just I don't think it puts fear into you. Like, oh shit, this team's going to go off. But I mean, his points are there. He's scoring a shit ton. He's got like a very solid couple players between Mixon, Allen. I do think that QB situation is going to be an issue for him. He's got 3 of them right now. I don't think he's played Howell yet, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's mostly been Goff. He's got Fields coming back, so I don't think there's any clear-cut starter there, and I think it could be a hit or miss situation for him there. But solid team at 83%, I think it says. It'll be tough to see him not make playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the trippers this week, and it would take a big slide for sure. Well, and then I guess that leads us to my team, 6-4, and then we've got the 4 teams right below that at 5-5 who are all playing each other this week. So you can hit on all 5 of those teams.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd start with you. Obviously, it's been like a weird year for the Sundays. I think the players that you initially thought that were gonna like step up for you with like the Pollards, the Debos, the Kelvins haven't really done it. Like Jamar took a little bit, but he's back to his old self. But it just feels like you're finding ways to win, making the right move. I mean, that D'Onta Foreman move last week, like I think it was like 5 minutes left in the first quarter. I hadn't checked the app because I was like, oh, I've seen DJ's stats. I know what he's done. And then I went there and I was like, wait a second, Foreman. And just to think it was him compared to Ridley, who put up like 1 point. So there's talent there. Kincaid, it's looking like he could be a difference maker. Breece Hall, every time he touches the ball, he feels like he could go for a big play. So I think another team it's going to come down to that QB for me, and making the right pick. He's still rostering Lawrence. I think he's hoping maybe he heats up. Purdy had a good game, but I don't know if you can rely on that for anything more than mid to high teens for points. So but I mean, same thing with Kirk. Excuse me, year in, year out, it's like Jolly's putting together a roster that's competing, if not always getting into playoffs and competing for championships. But the squad that I'll look at like right behind is Sheehan's. And
Same, yeah.
I mean, you look at the points for and you're like, this should be a first place team. But all 5 of his losses, I mean, his 5 wins, he's been a highest scorer. And then all 5 of his losses, I think he had 105 was his highest point total in a loss. So it's not like, oh, Sheehan's getting screwed here with what you usually see with like a top scoring team that's at a 500 record. But I mean, it's got that top end talent. It's got Mahomes, Kelsey, Tyreek, Amon-Ra, but I do think there's some holes there. And I think it's pretty evident why if those 2 don't like go off, those 3 or 4 guys don't go off, then you find the Knights struggling. But week in, week out, they're the highest projected team.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I mean, like you said, for me, it's been a weird year just in terms of some of the injuries and bye week combos like I've had. I've been kind of up and down, but I think Sheehan has been even almost more up and down with less obvious reason for it. It's just, I think, volatile guys on his team. Tyreek can either, 2 plays and he can be at 20 points real quick, or, if he gets contained, Patrick doesn't have a great game. It can be a totally different story real quick. But I think when you look at the 5-5 teams, my eyes definitely jump to his team first, like you said. And then probably if I had to rank the 4 of you, I would probably put you number 2 with Sandman closely followed. Kind of nice to see for me as the 6-4 team that you guys are all playing each other, and, only 2 teams are going to be able to get to 6-5. Which is, obviously it's going to create some separation here a little bit in the Valley. So huge matchup for you guys. Question I have on your team is kind of similar to my issue with Brees Hall, and that, your running backs they've looked good, but their teams are just so shitty. You really don't know what they're going to be able to do. So, I think Diggs will be able to turn it around. I think Waddle was a nice buy, although I do like Tank Dell. But I think it's going to come down to those running backs. And I don't know what your matchups look like coming down the stretch, but they've got to turn in some big performances, I think, for you to reach your goals and get to the chip. But I do think your team's probably right there behind Sheehan out of the 5-5 teams.
Yeah, and I think for what's there for me and like keeps me hopeful is just pure volume. Like Jacobs is getting absolutely fed since Antonio. He was getting fed before that, but since Pierce took over, like I think he's gone 25 plus touches. The Giants really have no one else to give it to. He had some good runs in the second half against the Cowboys, and I think those first couple of drives kind of pinned him deep, really set them back. But yeah, it's sketchy, especially with the ankle that he hurt earlier in the year, and he's still kind of in a contract year. Like I'm scared that he could personally just be like, what the fuck am I doing out here? But I mean, we have a good squad. I think a massive matchup. It's tough because I mean, we're tied with Sheehan, but I don't think anyone's catching him in points. So in my mind, I'm a game behind Sheehan right now, and it's like a must win. And I mean, I like some of the matchups this week. I think for the key for that matchup, I think I need Waddle to be within 4 or 5 of Tyreek, kind of just match him in that Dolphins offense.
He's due, right?
He is due. I said it to Dappy. He's due to break a long one. But when I look at, there's just a lot. I've said it for a while. There's a lot of holes with the dogs. Sandman, he's just kind of another hit or miss guy. He's either competing for highest score or going like 3 or 4 weeks under 100. Getting JJ back could be massive for him, obviously being the player that he is. But that kind of feels like a loser leaves town type game. Like whoever doesn't come out with the win there is probably going to have a long way to go to get to the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, whether or not JJ plays this week is just absolutely massive for Sandman's season. Looking at 2 Browns in his starting lineup without Watson, DTR starting. Looked pretty horrible his last time, and they've got a tough matchup against Pittsburgh's D. So in a big week, it feels like JJ's not back. It's going to be tough sledding. But then you look at the flip side, like you said, with Dimmer, and I don't know, those Devontae Smith, DK, they've obviously had disappointing seasons. And, the running back depth for him besides Eckler and Pacheco, like those guys are solid, but he's going to need those wide receivers to start performing. So, I don't know. They haven't shown many signs of life, especially DK in my book, but we'll see. Big matchup, and someone's got to win it. I guess, there's no way they tie, right? So someone's going to be 6-5 out of these 2. All right. Well, I think we might as well just go all the way through. I mentioned D Brown's team is kind of the black, or not the black sheep, but the wild card hanging out there. He's kind of been back and forth. He, tough loss 2 weeks ago and then bounced back with a nice win and looking, pretty good this week against the Spartans. Just matchup wise, he's projected to win by 20. So you got to figure with that team with 2 young, exciting RBs that are kind of trending up, Etienne and Gibbs, and then CD coming on like he has, and A-Chain coming back. That's like 4 guys that could be top 5 talents, like top 5 at their position any given week. So he's got the upside for sure. And like I said, I got him last week of the season. I'm very much hoping to have a playoff spot locked up before that matchup. I do not want to go and need to win against him.
It's a scary team. You just wonder if too many of those tight losses are just going to come back to bite him at the end of the year, and he finishes 7-8 or 8-7 and misses the playoffs by a game. But he's going to be a force to reckon with coming down. I think obviously he's got to take care of business this week and take down the Spartans, and I believe he has the Trippers in a little cousin matchup over the holidays. So that would be a bit like he's got to get to 6-6 and go there. Like my tier breakdown, like I still had him in tier 2, like playoff push fight in there. But he's still only 2 games. If Dappy wins this, he's, you know, 1 game back from clown suit consideration. So a lot could still happen, but I like his team. I think he's going to be he'll be here until the end, I think.
Yeah, no, for sure. And even I think worst case for him, it's a couple of tough losses. He, finished the season around 500, and I don't consider him to be in serious clown suit shape. But like you said, you never know. And then I guess flipping the script to the two teams that probably have no chances at playoffs and are just fighting for to avoid last place.
1%.
It's funny that I think Tuesday night I looked and they had the elimination next to your name in the stand-ins, and then Wednesday they took it away. They must have run some algorithms and realized that you have a 1% chance of making it.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, C-Mac's been in talk of the chat a little bit recently. I don't know. What do you think, Ross, about his team and just the approach to the year? I guess we can get into that now. I just kind of touch on his probation status and how we're feeling.
I mean, there's a lot left to be desired. It's C-Mac. I mean, on paper, like, he has a decent team, but not really. I mean, you look at it this week, he's projected for just over 100. He's got the least amount of points in the league. He had a wild draft strategy that everyone kind of criticized, and he came back with the, just wait, and here we are. And he's I mean, Dap wins a game, and Collins and the front runner for the clown suit. So I do think there is like some talent there with just Lamar and Kupp and JT for him to pull some upsets down the stretch, but you just wonder if the commitment's there. Like, it takes him getting called out to kind of get active in the group chat. I mean, he's got $75 in fab. That's kind of a discussion I have for later on, just like fab usage. And obviously we're all kind of learning, being the first year doing it, but you're curious. It's not like Ty Chandler's a sure in, like, gonna be a great start, anything like that. But he's rolling out a couple guys projected under 10, and you have a chance to throw some money, get this guy who could be a 1 week starter, and you're like, let me save the $75, and there's only 4 more weeks to use it. There's rarely like these sure in guys at this time of year that you want to, like, anything projected over 10, and he didn't even throw in a claim. Like, I don't think he even looked at the waivers. I don't think he had looked at his team. Like, I just, he's been more active. He's been more talkative, but I don't know if it's changed that much. And I still think it's a off season to discussion to see if he's, the fit for that 10th and final spot.
Yeah, no, I think leaving meat on the bones, good way to describe it. It's just kind of all right, what's the strategy here? And then it's not like there's some, oh yeah, that was the strategy. It was like he was just kind of shooting shots from the hip, and hoping they stuck. And hey, he's won 2 chips, and it's worked in the past. Like, going after the big names, sometimes it works, but I think just going after the big names, sitting, pretty much saying my team's going to be under 500 after week 5. Like, he pretty much guaranteed that on draft night with some of the picks he made. Like Watson, Kupp, Taylor, first 7 rounds, he pretty much said, I'm only going to take 50% of my first 7 picks for the first 5 weeks. And so, like, then you put yourself in a position where you're not going to look great. And it didn't feel like, all right, now, like, he's got Stroud and Lamar, could have made a move when CJ, and, I had conversations with him, and it was just like, not going to. And I don't know. I just think that you got to entertain some of those moves. I get a lot of people in the league, or some people in the league, are not the biggest traders or hate losing trades. And so they get a little bit scared of making a trade, in my opinion. And C-Mac's definitely the number one person of that in this league, in my opinion. But I don't know. There comes a point where being scared to trade and not putting your best foot forward, kind of, where's the line? I don't know. I think, like you said, it might be a discussion better for the off season, but yeah, I think that's my 2 cents. Stapp, you got anything?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give him credit. Like you said, he has been more active in the chat and, like, does actually feel like he's a part of the league this year. Like last year, I really just felt like C-Mac wasn't even in the league. But it is like only when he gets called out. I mean, I try to trade with him. I tried to get CJ Stroud from him, and like I just go, well, let's do CJ Stroud, and he's like, let's work up a deal that involves AJ Brown, and I'm like, dude, we're talking a quarterback that's sitting on your bench and the #2 fantasy wide receiver. Like, I don't know what you're expecting. And then after that, he didn't like. We went back and forth on a few, and then he just stopped responding at one point, and I was just like, okay, like so. I don't know. Like I'm at 2-8. I'm obviously not doing well, but like I'm out here. I've made like probably besides D Brown, like some of the most trades. Like I've made a bunch of trades this year. They might not have all worked out, but it feels like one of my more active trade years, and it's because I'm clearly something wasn't working, and I feel like at 3 you got me thinking along the similar lines, like something's not working. Maybe start listening to some of these trade offers, like Saquon Barkley for Cooper Kupp. I think is a pretty good trade, and he just thinks it's outlandish.
Yeah, that the comment about when he came back, I was like, I'm just gonna let this stew. I said what I had to say, and then he's like this morning, like Ross, any other comments? And I was like, okay, I got to bring in the trade that was discussed because it was very fair and like if anything, like I think he might have won it in a sense, and I didn't even know if I would do it. I think some of the best parts about fantasy, and I get some owners just a lot of years I don't make a ton of trades. I don't think Trevor makes a ton of trades, but they still entertain the conversation, and it's fun to like have the break off chats with the other guys in the league. And I think that's also part of being active is okay. CDAP asked me about Stroud, like let me answer him. Like we all have jobs, we understand you're not going to be able to answer like right away sometimes, but
Yeah. I think this is a good segue into the trades and some of the best trades, maybe some of the worst trades. I was looking through them before this. Nothing jumped out to me as like, oh, what a bad trade, or oh, what a good trade. But I do want to say just generally that like I know kind of what you were just saying about like the back and forth and guys having different opinions. Like I think that's one of the best things. And for me, like this year, D Brown and I have had some intense trade negotiations. We've gone back and forth. He's offered me a trade. I've said yes. Then I get ghosted, or he realizes he has too many wide receivers. So there's been a lot of back and forth. We've gotten frustrated with each other. We've both said we're not making trades with each other ever again going forward. But I think that's part of the valley, part of fantasy fun. Like I've hit him up since then for some trades. Like I definitely think it could happen. I know he was shitting on my T Higgins trade the other day, and I think I love that for the valley. Like, I mean, when I see a text that's like, what a dumb trade, of course I'm going to be like, oh, fuck you. But then like after the fact, you're like, yeah, I mean, maybe that was a dumb move, but it was a risk I'm willing to take. And I'll talk about what that strategy was, or like I'm willing to talk about. And I just think that's a beautiful thing about the league and fantasy in general. And so when there's someone or just team members who you're like, I don't even know what this guy's strategy is, and you can't really talk to it, and then you try to have a conversation and they just get defensive. Or I think to me, that's when it's like, man, I'm just trying to have a conversation, get some trades going, see what your strategy is, like maybe encourage you, hey, this strategy could be good because that guy's gone by and you need someone. And then when it gets shut down and there's no engagement on that I think lessens the league. And I completely agree. Someone like Sam, man, he's always willing to talk this and that, and just he's got a clear strategy. You know what he's thinking. And just because me and him, I don't think I've ever done a trade, doesn't mean he's still just as active in my book. It's just he's got a different strategy, and I recognize that and I respect that. So a little bit of a tangent there, but I think that's just kind of goes into what we're talking about here.
For sure. And in your first comment, like that's my note that I put down. Dappy asked us to do like the worst trade. And my note is like, it's kind of all fair trades around. Like I think the one D Brown and I made got a ton of publicity, and everyone's like, I trade raped him. Like, go look at the stats. Like CD's outperforming Diggs and Evans is outperforming more. Like so he at this point he's won 2/3 of it. Like that's just classic Valley, like initial reactions. And when I was looking at some other, I'll get off the CMAC last comment, looking at some other trade talks we've had, he'd just be like, you're not going to fleece me. You're not going to rape me like you did D Brown. And it's like, if you have, like you said, if you have that mindset going into it, then you're never going to come to common ground there. But
Yeah.
I mean, overall, it just felt like there's been a lot of trades. This has got to be one of the most trades we've had in a year, and it's surprising because I think Kirch only had like one or two, and he's usually up there with D Brown. And there's been a lot of different players on the move. And I went through this sheet earlier and I found that there was 10 players who've been traded at least twice, and
Wow.
2 of them have been traded 3 times. Can you guys name them without looking at this? Because they're
I feel
probably
like just because I know, because I have been in deals with both of them, is T. Higgins and Ramondre Stevenson.
no. T. Higgins was 1. Stevenson's only been traded twice.
George Pickens.
Nope, he's only been twice. Oh no, actually no, he is sorry. Yes, Pickens is the other guy.
Yeah, I wasn't 100% sure, but I thought it was him.
There's some like Judy and Dylan. I think D Brown and Sheehan traded and then traded back for it, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Madison's been moved, Stevenson, Mixon a couple times, and then Gus Bus last week. So
yeah, I mean, when I was looking at it, like you said, that one trade popped out, and of course, the first week after you made that trade, it was a huge differential. Like, you know, it totally changed both those matchups. But the way I'm looking at it, it's kind of like, I think at the end of the season, we'll be able to look back and say, what a dumb trade, what a good trade. Or not a dumb trade, but that didn't work out well. That worked out for someone. And I think there's 3 trades that, to me, are going to have a big impact on the rest of the season. So that's kind of what I went with, is just the 3 trades that I think will have a big impact going forward. Whether it's like which way it'll sway, I don't really know. I think getting Amon Brown, St. Brown is big. Upside there is, like, I love that play for Sheehan. So I think we could look back on that trade and say that won Sheehan this league potentially. And then another one was Tank for Waddle. I think for you that I forget who it was, Tank and someone else for Waddle, but I think
Dotson.
Goose Egg Dotson.
I honestly think, you know, Waddle is either gonna emerge and break out or just continue to, you know, I don't. It's hard to say what's going to happen with him, and I think the same thing with Tank, where he could continue this upwards trend of becoming a top 12 wide receiver, like CJ Stroud's guy. And like we look back at the end of the season and say, wow, Tank's clearly much better than Waddle, or like just right there in the same tier at least. Or we could look back and say, Tank was kind of a flash in the pan. Nico Collins is just as good. Stroud, you know, came back to life. Defenses figured him out, and Waddle is who we thought he was. He's done with the injuries. He got figured out. So I could see that one driving, you know, having a big impact on Ross's season. And then last, real quick, for myself, Lane, and Sheehan, me giving up Kyron Williams, I was back and forth on it. I felt like I didn't love his upside coming back from the injury, and the Rams potentially not being quite as good down the stretch with some tough matchups. And then I got Gus, traded Gus for T. We'll see how it works out for all of us. But I think that one, just the 1-for-1 swaps in a couple different directions there was interesting. And I could definitely see Kyron coming back and being a beast, and me regretting the fuck out of that one. So we shall see.
I don't hate the movement of Kyron, because I think, I don't know, the Rams have really been struggling lately, and he also had a ton of success before kind of Cooper Kupp came back. So, and they were also winning some games early on when he was getting a lot of his points. So, but I do kind of question the Higgins just from like roster makeup. I know you and I were texting, and you're like, championship weekend, they're playing the Chiefs. I could start both of them, and that could be, you know, like an absolute shootout. But you know, just kind of like your roster makeup, I struggled to see you feeling comfortable throwing both Bengals in, especially kind of the year the Bengals have been having. They had a hot last couple weeks, but besides that, their offense has been either up or down. So, but to your other point, I love that Amon-Ra. I can't believe Lane made that trade. I know he kind of needed some RB depth with Aaron Jones and Connor being hurt, but I think he was his first round pick, or I think he was 10-11, so something like that. But yeah, there's a ton of talent there. He's like a reception machine. He's getting a ton of points. So yeah, I think Sheehan had that 1 week where he really went in, and I think he probably lost the Cook one, but It's tough to say. Again, like overall, just went through it. I wanted to be like, this is the one that's like the clear cut. Like this person got screwed. They made a terrible deal, and there's just not a ton that stand out right now for me.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of season left. You know, we've got a couple of weeks. We should probably talk about moving the trade deadline up next offseason, but it's a couple of weeks away still, so we'll see. Still could see some movement. All right, let's talk quickly some potential league winners. I don't know. Do you have just a couple that you had in mind, or how do you want to do this?
Yeah, the way I did it was just kind of like league winners so far, not like predictions going forward. I think for the two that stand out for me with Kirch is Swift and Mostert. Obviously, Kirch had to trade second, third round pick to get Mostert, but just the kind of the value where he was drafted and just the player that he's been, scoring a shit ton of points. Swift, we all kind of had no idea what was going to happen in that Philly backfield, and he really emerged and he looks electric. He stayed healthy. Sandman, I love like that Laporta pick was massive. He's turned into a top 5 tight end. Kincaid, I think from the past couple weeks and going forward, like it's so for being one of the guys in kind of the tight end limbo and not having someone. And I know you were kind of there earlier to now have a guy who's almost guaranteed for 10 plus points the past couple weeks. That's big. And then just looking at D Brown's team, I think Gibbs he had his patience. He waited and just kind of watching most of that game last week and obviously having a big rooting interest against Montgomery. Montgomery got stuffed a couple times at the goal line. Gibbs scored 2 touchdowns. It felt like he played more. I mean, they both played a shit ton and they both got a ton of touches just because it was a shootout, but feels like Gibbs is really emerging and the Lions this was probably their plan all along. Just, be patient with the young guy. And, A-Chain and D Brown, I think picked him up from waivers or drafted him really late. And he's been able to, in the games he's played, just absolutely go off. So if D Brown can get even if just like remotely, like half of what A-Chain's been for the next couple weeks, that'll be big.
Yeah, no, I did it a little bit differently, but had a lot of the same names. Just kind of looking at guys who could potentially be league winners for folks. I think Kincaid and A-Chain were both on my list. And then 2 other ones, Keaton Mitchell for Lane. I think that was a big reason why he was ready to get rid of the Gus bus, is just him believing in Keaton. And that's just another example of like Lane had a clear strategy when he hit me up for that trade. Kyren Williams for Gus bus. He believed in Keaton. I was kind of out on Kyren. It just made sense. It wasn't, oh, you're trying to fleece me. It was like, I see where you're coming from. I'm coming from here. Let's make a trade. So I think that could be a real big move for Lane. And then I think Rashee Rice for the Chiefs and Kirchy. He's been pretty solid, and it feels like they're going to continue to use him more and more. He's on the field a ton, but I think Mahomes is really earning that trust, and I think he's going to be a solid wide receiver for Kirch. So those are just a couple of guys I'm going to keep my eye on, trying to talk trades about, but it seems to be tough.
For sure.
All right, Dap, anything else we got to cover here?
I think we had disappointment. I put some disappointments. I basically took one player from every team. I'll just run through it really quick. Like Dameon Pierce for me, that's been an absolute failure. Calvin Ridley for you had a couple good weeks, but besides that, he's been terrible. For C-Mac, Bijan, first round pick, he's shown flashes, but he just doesn't get the ball enough, and he's not given first round value. Lane, I had Devontae Adams. He's still putting up some quality points there, but it's not what he expected. Dimmer, I got Devontae Smith. I think he drafted him second, third round. He's had maybe 1 or 2 big games, and that's about it. Sandman, I got Derrick Henry. He's been looking worse and worse, and it's starting to look like all those carries over the years wearing on him. I know this is going to fucking bite me on Monday night. I'm going to lose the matchup, but Mahomes, he's been good, but he hasn't been great. Like, he's not like, would Sheehan take him top 25 pick? You would expect him to really, it's Patrick Mahomes. You expect him to absolutely win you matchups. And I don't think it's been completely there yet for him. But like I said, it's going to happen. Dappy, I got Sanders and Waller, both just absolute duds from where he picked them. And D Brown, I mean, again, his roster is looking good, and it's not really anyone he drafted. If anything, I think the disappointment is in September. Every year he tells me, dude, I'm not going to make a bunch of trades. I like the team I drafted. And then he just hits the panic button way too early and starts flipping his roster over and over. And I mean, he's good at it because he flipped it over and kind of made it a little ugly. And then he's come back with it.
Yeah. The thing with D Brown is he flips his roster over so much that there's bound to be, even if he hits 60% of the time, which it seems like he does, he just flips so much that he's going to end up making some bad trades and, having disappointments. And it's a lot easier to say, oh, I had that guy and he sucked versus I had that guy who I traded for and he sucked. It becomes just, you look back and have that regret. But I respect the gameplay for sure.
And his waiver activity, like he's adding, dropping players like crazy, not really letting anyone stay. If they have a bad week on his team, they're hitting the fucking waivers. So,
I mean, some of the moves he makes, it's like, oh, that's a good move. I wish I had thought of that. Like I'm paying attention, Jameson Williams, whoever it is. But then sometimes it's like, man, that was a little bit instinctual. I called him out. I don't think he loved it on the Devin Singletary drop, and it was just like that was just an emotional drop. It felt like, but
yep.
It is what it is. All right. Well, I mean, we've highlighted it. Big week. Gotta love the Valley. Competitive. Like we were saying, it's not very top heavy. It feels like truly 8 teams can win the championship, which I don't know if we've ever had, or if I've ever felt that confident in saying that in week 11 or week 10 even. So I think it's going to be a good finish. And, a lot of good football coming up. Thanksgiving week next week's always a lot of fun, with the matchup spread out. It's all good stuff, man. I'm trying to get my some plans in place to hopefully get up to Mass for some of these final weeks, and hopefully I'm in the chip to enjoy it and watch it. But either way, I'm looking forward to the rest of it. Any final words from you guys?
No, like you said, I mean, massive week this week. The next 2-3 weeks is really where the league's gonna form into what will happen. I think the couple 5-5 teams can separate, but you can look at a guy like Lane, and he's facing Kirch this week. He has a couple losses. He may be tied for that final spot. So I think you had a great point. 8 teams all have kind of a realistic chance, and the beauty of having a punishment is we have something else to kind of root for, compete for Dappy and CMAC. So the Valley is thriving as ever.
Yes, sir. All right. That's it. Week 11. Here we go.
See you, boys.
Peace.